Hey friend, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on the video. Listen, if this is your first time here, welcome. I give lighthearted reviews and recaps of some of my favorite TV shows and movies. So if this is something that interests you, go ahead and click that subscribe button. If you like what you see, hit that like button for your girl. And of course, leave me a comment. I have a lot more content coming to my channel, and I'm glad you're here. So with that being said, let's get into it. Hey y'all. Okay, so today we are here to talk you. This is season 5, episode 2. This one is called Blood Will Have Blood. And y'all, oh my God, this was such a good episode. I mean, they are bringing it on this final season of the show, and I am here for it. So let's just go ahead and get into it. So we got Joe, right? He's at the bookstore, he's cleaning up, and he's doing the voiceover. And remember what I said last time, usually when he talks about you are so beautiful, you are the one, he's talking about somebody else. But this season again, he's talking to himself. So he's saying that, you're okay. You did what you had to do to Uncle Bob to protect your family. And it actually felt pretty damn good, right? So he's saying that, taking care of Bob in defense of his family was like a resurrection, and he doesn't have to bury his old ways, to live happily ever after with his family. And he feels so alive. So we know that we got the old Joe back, y'all. He is back to his old ways, and he feels pretty good about it. All right. So we see all three of them. We got Kate, we got Joe, and we got little Henry, and they're all at breakfast. And Henry is like, asking Kate whether or not they can go to a museum today. And Joe was like, what do you mean? Like, it's a school day. We can't go on a school day. So Kate's like, yeah, let's do it on the weekend. So he goes off and he gets ready for school. And while the two of them are just sitting there, they see on the news that they're already reporting about Uncle Bob's death, right? So it's already made it out. The media is already aware. So Kate shares that she's a little nervous about this whole thing and just wants to make sure that, it can't be traced back to them about what happened with Bob. So she asked Joe if he burned all of those writings. You remember in the last episode, Joe was actually writing about doing in Uncle Bob instead of actually doing it, until Kate kind of gave him the go ahead to take care of business. So she's like, listen, I want to make sure that you got rid of all those writings, everything, because what we don't need is that coming back to bite us. And he's like, oh, yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. I got rid of it. Yeah. And we know that he didn't. We know that he has it. It's in the cage down at the basement, down at the bookstore. So, honey, I have a feeling that's going to come back to bite him. Let's see what happens with that. Okay, so at the bookstore, we see Bronte. She's coming in with this chair, some chair I guess she found on the street. And, she's being super chatty about the chair. Joe doesn't like the chair. And they have their little banter back and forth about that. And Joe kind of feels like she's flirting with him a little bit. And even at one point, he says that, hey, was I flirting with her a little bit? So we find out that Bronte's been staying at the bookstore. Joe didn't know it, but yep, she's been staying there. She said that she can't afford a place of her own. So Joe offers to give her a raise to help her out. And then Bronte starts asking questions to Joe, like about his wealth, and letting him know that she's seen that he's been kind of hobnobbing with the rich and the famous, over there in London and everything. So her perception of him is that he's some rich guy, right? And so she even says, it's a little weird that you would even be at this bookstore. Like, what is this, a tax write off for you? I mean, why are you here? And, Joe's just kind of not really giving up too much about it. But in the meantime, he does notices that bookshelf, y'all know the bookshelf, the one that blocks the entrance way down there to the basement where the cage is, has been moved a little bit. So he asked Bronte about it. Hey, did you move that bookshelf? And she was like, yeah, I was sweeping up and it was kind of in my way. So I moved it a little bit. And, she was like, well, what's down there? And he was like, oh, nothing for you to be concerned with. It's a mess down there. So just stay from down there and everything will be okay. So as he's saying that, his phone rings. He gets a call from the school because there's been an incident and Henry looks like he's been in a fight. Okay, so next we have Joe and Kate. They're at the principal's office. They had to go to the school to find out what happened with Henry. So they run into Reagan. Reagan, what are you doing here? Well, come to find out, Henry punched Reagan's daughter, Gretchen, in the nose and broke the little girl's nose. So Kate and Joe are in the principal's office, and the principal's asking questions about Henry's early childhood and also Joe's early childhood, right? So Joe lies and says that he didn't have a violent childhood past. And anyway, the principal is like, well, so he is suspended, but if Reagan presses charges that they're going to have to expel Henry because they have a zero tolerance policy on fighting. So it's pretty serious about what's going on with little Henry. So anyway, we see Bronte. She's back at the bookstore and she's moving stuff around, and her curiosity gets the better of her because the next thing we see, she is trying to break into the locked door that leads down to the basement by listening to a YouTube tutorial. And this scene kind of made me smile a little bit because I always joke and say, if you ever want to know anything, go on to YouTube. They've got videos that show you how to do everything. And I guess that includes picking a lock, because here we see your girl Bronte, and that's what she's doing, trying to pick the lock to get down there. So it looks like she's almost got it, but then she hears Joe and Henry coming in, so she has to hurry up, close everything back up, push everything back together, and get up there as if she wasn't doing anything. But my advice to you, Miss Bronte, girl, leave that basement alone. Do what Joe told you to do. He told you to stay from down there, and that's what you need to do. Okay, so Joe introduces Henry to Bronte, and she's like, "Hey, nice to meet you. What's that you're reading?" And they start talking back and forth about the book that he's reading and the characters. And I think one of the characters in the book that he likes was, I guess, a bad character or something. So she refers to that as a baddie. And then, Joe's like, "Oh boy, there she goes. She's flirting again." And then she asks why the little boy's not in school. And so Henry's like, "Well, I got suspended today." And she's like, "Oh, I guess you're a baddie too. And I think then Bronte realizes how inappropriate it was for her to say that. So she walks off. So when she goes away, that's when Joe had the opportunity to ask Henry, "Hey, what happened? You don't have to not tell me. I'm not going to be upset. Just let me know what happened." So he goes on and lets Joe know that the reason why he hit Gretchen was because Gretchen was saying that his mom was a killer. And he was like, "Your mom was a killer?" He's like, "Yeah. Gretchen said that she heard her mom over, saying it. So that means that Reagan was saying it and Gretchen probably overheard it, repeated it to Henry. Henry got mad, punched her in the nose, and that's how that happened." So Joe was like, "Listen, man, don't worry about it. Your mother was very sick, but she loved you very much, okay? But she was sick, and that's why she's not here anymore." So anyway, Joe and Henry, they go home, and Joe is telling Kate about what Henry said, that Reagan said about his mom, Love. And Kate is like, "Well, actually, I invited Reagan over to dinner, because the plan is that we're going to play nice, and maybe, Reagan will calm down a little bit and she won't be so prone to want to press charges against us. Maybe she'll forget all about us. But listen, I need you to handle this with me. We're going to be very nice. We're going to be sociable and just be on our best behavior tonight." So they're about to have dinner. Okay, y'all. So we're at the dinner. We got Reagan, and we're introduced to Reagan's husband, Harrison, who, the way Joe tells it, is an ex football player. And I guess he's got some kind of issues with concussions and things of that nature. But Joe kind of describes him as a trophy husband, just non problematic, just there. Anyway, we also see that Maddie is there. She was not invited, but she pops up, I guess, to support her twin sister. And coming down the stairs, we see Teddy, and I guess he was there to support Kate. So the gang's all here. We have all the brothers and sisters and their spouses, except for Teddy's spouse, that is there. So they all sit down to eat. The tension is there. No one's really saying anything to anybody. And Kate suggests that they all go to the Hamptons just to kind of get away from everything and kind of, get back down to basics and kind of let everything go. And Reagan's not here for it. She's like, "Listen, we just gonna cut to it. I want y'all to pay for my daughter's rhinoplasty, and I also want both of you guys to apologize on behalf of that little boy who broke my baby's nose, right?" And so back at the bookstore, Bronte manages to get down to the basement. So when she gets down there, she sees the cage, and the cage is filled with these books. And she's like, "Oh my God." And I think that she thinks that she has like hit the bookstore jackpot, right? These are where the books are kept, the ones of value. So she's looking on through and she's excited about what she's seeing. And she takes out her phone and she snaps a picture of one of the books. And as she does that, I don't know if the cage was already shut, but I know that it locks. So it locks and she can't get out because, of course, it locks from the outside. So she's like, oh my God, I'm locked in here. She looks at her phone to try to call out. And of course, there's no service because that's the way we do it down in the basement, honey. There is never any service down in the basement. Poor Bronte. I mean, Joe told you stay out the basement, and here you are. Mm-mm-mm. Okay, y'all. So we on the apology tour, evidently, because Reagan wants an apology. Kate says that she is sorry about what Henry did, this, that, and the third. Now it's time for Joe to apologize, right? So Joe apologizes to Reagan and Harrison for Henry's behavior. In the meantime, across the room, his cell is just going off because Bronte is down there at the basement. And I guess every time there's any movement down there, he gets a message or notification on his cell. So that's just like blowing up and going off, but he doesn't see that because it's across the room. Um, anyway, after Joe apologizes, Reagan doesn't accept Joe's apology. And Joe says, you know what? I'm going to tell you something. The reason why Henry did what he did was because your daughter said that you called my ex wife, his mother, a murderer. And Reagan was like, I wasn't talking about love. I was talking about Kate. And everybody's like, what? And then Reagan is like, yeah, I believe that you killed Uncle Bob. And, we all know that Uncle Bob was trying to get you out of here. We all know that we were going to vote you out. Then all of a sudden he just comes up, he just unalives himself. I mean, how do you explain that? And so Teddy jumps in and he's like, listen, Reagan, I don't know what's going on with you, but let me tell you something. I done already seen the footage from Uncle Bob, and it was an unaliving, and nobody else had anything else to do with it but Uncle Bob. And she's like, oh, really? Well, I'd like to see that footage if you have it. He's like, yeah, well, I erased it. Nobody should have to see that. So that kind of deaded that conversation. And the next thing Reagan is just going in, talking about Henry, talking about Joe, just, your son this and your son that. And honey, the next thing you know, Henry runs in, throws a knife at Reagan, yells at her, runs out. Everybody is shook. And Joe was like, look, I've had enough. Y'all ain't got to go home, but y'all got to get the up out of here, right? So he throws everybody out. Later on that night, he's tucking Henry in and he's having his voiceover, and he's like, we'll talk about throwing the knife later, but in the meantime, this warrior needs some sleep. And I'm like, Joe, yeah, Joe was like kind of condoning that a little bit about what he did, I feel like, but I don't know. But Joe's like, listen, we got to take care of Reagan. Enough is enough with her. So he's going to have to talk to Kate about it and see how she feels about it. We'll see. Okay, so Joe's having a talk with Kate, and he's like, listen, we're going to have to take out Reagan. I mean, there's no other way around it. We heard about what she said at dinner, and she's coming after you, right? And so Kate is like, so is this going to be your solution to it all? Every time somebody has a problem with us, this is going to be your plan to do what we did with Uncle Bob? I mean, we're not doing that, right? That is my sister. Like, when is it going to end? This is what we're going to do. And he goes, it's going to end when you, me, and Henry are all safe, right? So then she's like, well, Henry needs therapy. And I don't know, I guess it was that part about Henry needing therapy. And Joe gets upset about that. He starts yelling, and while he's, yelling about that and how he's just a kid, he hears his phone going off. And that's the notification that there's movement down in Mooney's bookstore, because Bronte is down there locked in the daggone cage. So of course he has to leave and go see what's going on. So he gets down there, he sees Bronte, and at first I didn't know if he was going to let her out of the cage or not. Bronte goes in there and she sees the books, and I think that she thought that the books that were in there were of some value, right? Because she's looking, she's like, oh man, she does take a picture of one of the books. And so, Joe's asking her, what are you doing down here? I told you to stay from down here. And at first she's just like, well, I was just wondering what these books were down here. And I know that these were probably the hard to find books. And I don't know if he bought it or not, because then she was like, all right, let me just come clean. The reason why I'm down here is because, I was looking for I guess, books to maybe sell because I'm broke. I need to pay my bills. One of these books will pay off all my debt and help me out with my play. And, Bronte is kind of like, well, I know that you don't see it that way because you don't have these kind of problems. These aren't rich people problems. These are the problems that I'm having right now. And you can tell by the way that she's talking to Joe that she feels like she knows him as some kind of rich kid. Little does she know that's not the upbringing that he had. So he goes on, shares with her that he made a mistake as a kid. He got bounced around the system. He ended up with this mean couple that used to lock him in a cage, and that's his story, right? So Bronte goes on to say, "Hey, I read your manuscript too, as well, and I think it's pretty good and everything. But your protagonist, he's a serial killer, but why? I mean, he doesn't have a backstory. I mean, he needs a little bit more depth. And so he listens to her, but he does fire her and he tells her, get out of here. You're fired. I don't ever want to see you back in here again. Because, in Joe's eyes, she's a thief. She tried to steal from him. So, and he does let her out the cage. I was surprised because I was like, "Ooh, girl, you." A lot of times, people don't get let out the cage now, but he did let her out the cage, so people can change. So kudos to Joe for now. Okay, so now that Joe and Kate had the conversation earlier, and Joe knows how Kate feels about him not doing anything else, we're not going down this road about, the same way that we did in handling Uncle Bob. So he's like, listen, I'm still going to handle Reagan, but I just can't let Kate know about it because he feels like it's the right thing to do for him and his family, and eventually Kate will understand. All right. So meanwhile, back at the house, Kate's talking to Teddy, and she lets him know that she's going to appoint him as the COO, which was Bob's old position. So she asks him if he really did have that footage that he was talking about at dinner of Uncle Bob's unaliving, and he was like, "Well, I was just maybe sort of bluffing about that." But he also says, if I did have it, would I find anything else other than Uncle Bob unaliving himself? And she's like, your guess is just as good as mine. And so they end their conversation with him saying that he will always have her back. Now, there's something about Teddy, something that's just kind of got my good eye on Teddy. I think he's okay, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm just gonna just say that for now. Anyway, back at the office, we got Killer Joe, honey. He is ready to take care of business with Reagan. He's in the office. It's at night. It's dark in there, and he's looking for Reagan. He doesn't really see her. Then all of a sudden, he sees her. She grabs a bottle of wine. She grabs some music, and she goes from her office to Kate's office, and turns on the music, drinking the wine, and the next thing you know, we see this other guy come in, big guy. He's all in black, and he just kind of slams her down and is calling her names and acts like he's getting ready to do something with her. And so Joe is getting ready to spring into action because he's like, "Well, I can't let this happen, because." Generally at the end of the day, he's a good guy, I guess, but he's just don't want to let that happen. I guess maybe he wanted to take care of it himself, but then he stops because the guy takes off his mask, and who is it? It's Harrison. So he's like, "Oh, it's Harrison." So they're just doing role playing in the office. So I thought that he was going to just leave and be like, "Okay, we'll do this some other time." But nope, not Joe. He doesn't. Anyway, there was something going on with the mask that she had on or something, and it was too tight or the holes were too small. So she asked Harrison to go find some scissors so they could cut bigger holes into it. And so when he walked off to go find the scissors, he comes up behind her and hits her in the back of the head, and then he locks him in the closet. So the next thing we see is she's in the cage. So we got Reagan in the cage, and we don't know what's going on with that, but she's down there. Poor Reagan. Okay, y'all. So next we see Joe. He's at the bookstore, and we know that he still has Reagan down in the basement. He invites Maddie, not Maddie. He invites Bronte to come to the bookstore, and he actually apologizes and gives her her job back. Not only does he do that, but he also gives her the apartment upstairs. So as they go upstairs to check out the apartment, they walk in, and Bronte's just looking a little nervous. Joe's like, something wrong. And she's like, well, I did read Sherry and Carrie Conrad's book and, the whole caging thing, and he's like, oh, yeah, well, that was a story that Love told them, and of course that was derived from my childhood trauma. So it's really a shame that somebody that you thought really loved you would use something like that, against you just to make a profit. And I don't know if what he was saying was meant to tug at her heartstrings or maybe, develop some trust. I'm not sure what's going on and why he said that, but hmm, interesting. So anyway, he says that he looks forward to any input that she can give in regards to his writing. So my thoughts on it is this: I don't know why you have Bronte of all people. Now you got this person down here in this cage. We all know how nosy Bronte is. So not only does she work there, she also lives there. So she's always going to be there. And now you got this stuff going on with these cage and these people that you plan on doing whatever you're going to do. I don't think it's going to work. Not with Bronte being around because she's just too nosy. She's too inquisitive. She's always asking questions. And I really believe like Bronte knows more about Joe than she's letting on. I feel like she's not who she says she is. I feel like there's an agenda there. So I'm curious to see how this all plays out. But anyway, he goes home. He's there with Henry and he's having a conversation with him. And he's, again, talking about love and saying how she was sick, and that she did love him. And sometimes people need help. And so he's talking to him about therapy. And Kate's standing at the door, listening to the conversation. And, she's pleased that he's having a conversation with him. So it looks like it's going to be therapy for Henry. We'll see how that goes. All right, y'all. And lastly, we have the conversation with Kate and Joe. They're sitting there and they're talking, and Kate is explaining to Joe that, when him and Henry came into her life, she vowed to be the kind of parent that she never had. So she's just explaining to him, listen, what we did with Uncle Bob, that could never happen again under any circumstances. Like, I don't want to be that kind of parent. You had a parent like that. I had a parent like that. And so in the middle of this conversation, she gets a phone call and it's none other than Reagan. And so you can, hear Reagan's voice and then, and you hear the voiceover of Joe saying, what? No, it can't be. And I'm saying, what? No, it can't be. What is going on? How does she get out? What is happening? And so we see Joe, he's going to the bookstore. He gets down there, he runs downstairs. And who's down there? As soon as he gets down there, all you hear is boo boo. And I was like, oh Lord. So he done messed around and got Maddie instead of Reagan. How is he gonna get out of this? Because I don't see no way out of it. The only thing that I can see is if he maybe blackmails Maddie because she is having an affair with her sister's husband. But honey, it's just too much drama for one night. It was a great episode. You guys let me know what you think in the comments. What do you guys think about this Joe and Maddie and Reagan situation? How is he going to get out of that? Also, tell me what you think about Henry. Am I off about that? Or, are you guys thinking the same thing? Is something going on with him? I don't know. Just let me know. But anyway, I'll be back in a couple of days. I'm going to try to get the next episode out before Friday. So you guys be on the lookout for that. If you like the content, consider subscribing. Like the video if you liked it, leave a comment, and I will chat with you guys real soon. Until then, bye.